I was sitting at my own kitchen table, holding a printed email, paper still warm from the printer, and my hands were so steady, it scared me. Across from me, my mother-in-law, Corinne, was smiling that polished smile she always wore, the one that made everyone in any room think she was the warmest person they'd ever met. But I'd just read the words she'd written about me to my husband. Words about my mind, my mothering, my fitness as a wife. And the warmth was a lie. The smile was a weapon. And I was done pretending I didn't know the difference. My mother-in-law was secretly manipulating me behind my husband's back, so I took drastic measures to end it. My name is Waverly Soren. I'm 31, and I've been married to my husband Graham for 5 years. We have a daughter, Nola, who just turned 3, and until about a year ago, I thought I had a life most people would envy. Nice house, stable marriage, a mother-in-law who I believed, truly believed, loved me like a daughter. I was so wrong about that last part. Dangerously wrong. Let me give you some context. Graham is an only child, and his mother, Corinne, has always been the sun his world orbits around. His father passed away when Graham was 14. Heart attack, sudden, no warning, and Corinne raised him alone after that. She worked 2 jobs, kept the house immaculate, put Graham through college on sheer willpower. She's objectively an impressive woman, and for the first 3 years of our marriage, I admired her without reservation. Corinne was at our house constantly, but not in the overbearing way, or at least that's what I told myself. She'd come to help with Nola when I was exhausted. She'd show up with a casserole when I hadn't had time to cook. She'd sit with me on the back porch while Nola napped and tell me stories about her late husband, about raising Graham alone, about the grief that never fully goes away. I felt closer to her than I did to my own mother. And that's the piece that made everything work so well for Corinne, my relationship with my actual mother, Della. Della and I had been distant for years. Not hostile, just hollow. She remarried when I was 16, moved far away with her new husband, and our relationship never recovered from the distance. We talked on holidays, she sent presents for Nola, but there was no depth there, no warmth you could lean on. So when Corinne stepped into that space, I opened the door wide. I needed a mother figure so badly that I didn't question why one was volunteering so eagerly for the role. The first crack came about a year ago, during Nola's 2nd birthday party. We'd spent days planning. I'd made decorations by hand, baked a 3-layer cake, organized games. Corinne arrived early to help set up and immediately started rearranging things. Waverly, sweetheart, the streamers would catch the light so much better by the window, don't you think? And this cake, did you make this yourself? I did, I said, standing back to look at it proudly. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. It's charming, really, very homemade. I could have picked something up from that bakery Graham loves. You know the one. But this is just so brave of you. Brave? To attempt it yourself. I think that's wonderful. Such a small thing. A pinprick. But it lodged under my skin and stayed. Brave. Like baking a cake for my daughter's birthday was a risk I'd taken. That night, lying in bed, I said to Graham, "Your mom made a weird comment about the cake." "What kind of comment?" He was scrolling his phone, half listening. "She called me brave for making it, like it was some kind of daring feat." Graham laughed. "That's just mom being mom. She's particular about presentation. Don't read into it, Wave." "I'm not reading into it. I'm telling you it felt strange." "Okay, it felt strange, but it wasn't meant that way." Sometimes you sense that someone is slowly, carefully reshaping the walls around you, and you mention it to the one person who should see it too, and they tell you the walls haven't moved. But your gut doesn't imagine things. Your gut is the first part of you that refuses to participate in a lie. After the birthday party, I started watching Corinne more carefully. And once I started looking, I couldn't unsee it. She had a pattern. She'd make observations to Graham that sounded like loving concern, but functioned like poison. Graham, honey, has Waverly seemed more tired than usual? She's taking on so much. I worry she doesn't know when to ask for help. Translation: Waverly is falling apart. Or she'd say, I just want to make sure Nola's getting enough consistency. Toddlers need real structure, and Waverly is so beautifully spontaneous. Translation: Waverly is a chaotic mother. Every comment was deniable. Everyone, in isolation, sounded kind. But I started writing them down in a notebook I kept in my nightstand. And when I read them together, the pattern was unmistakable. Drip by drip, Corinne was eroding Graham's confidence in me. And she was doing it so gently that he thought she was helping. Around this same time, my older brother Dylan came to stay with us for a week. He'd just ended his apartment lease, and his new place wasn't ready yet. Dylan is the quiet, observant type. He'll sit in a room for an hour and absorb everything before he says a word. Having him in the house felt grounding. He was the one person in my life who had always told me the truth, even when I didn't want to hear it. One evening, Corinne was over for dinner. She was telling a story about Graham's childhood, how she'd sacrificed vacations and new clothes and social life to give him everything. She told it beautifully, the way she told everything. Graham's eyes got soft. He reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Later, when everyone else was in the living room and Dylan and I were loading the dishwasher, he said quietly, That woman doesn't talk about Graham like he's your husband. What do you mean? She talks about him like he's still her project, her creation. And she talks about you like you're the temp agency sent to fill in while she's away. Dylan, I'm just telling you what I see, Wave. I wanted to argue, but I had a notebook full of evidence that said the same thing. That same week, while Dylan was helping me clear some boxes from the hall closet, we'd been meaning to organize it for months, I found a stack of old photos from our wedding. Graham and me at the altar, laughing. The two of us cutting the cake. And then a photo I'd forgotten about. Corinne, standing just behind us in the reception line, her hand on Graham's shoulder, whispering something in his ear, while I stood 2 feet away, talking to a guest. I remembered that moment now. She'd pulled him aside 3 times during the reception. I'd thought nothing of it then, a mother being emotional at her son's wedding. But looking at the photo through new eyes, what I saw was possession. She wasn't letting go. She was adjusting her grip. Dylan saw me staring at it. You okay? Yeah, just seeing things I missed. That's not missing things, Wave. That's someone making sure you wouldn't see them. Things escalated quietly after that. Corinne started coming by when she knew Graham was at work. She'd rearrange Nola's room, swap out the books I'd picked for different ones, reorganize the closet, move the furniture just slightly. She'd adjust the thermostat, reorganize the pantry. Small territorial moves, like an animal marking the corners of a space it considers its own. I noticed some of Nola's books changed, I mentioned to Graham one night. Mom probably swapped a few. She finds great stuff at those library sales. I chose those books, Graham. It's not a competition, Wave. She's just being involved. There's a difference between involved and invasive. He sighed. That heavy, tired sigh that meant, here we go again. She means well. That phrase, she means well. It became a wall I ran into so many times, I started to bruise. Then came the emails. One Tuesday afternoon, I was using Graham's laptop to look up a recipe. Nola wanted to make cookies, and I needed a dairy-free version. Graham had left his email open. Right at the top of his inbox, a message from Corinne. Subject line, just thinking about some things. I should not have read it, I know that. But something, call it instinct, call it survival, made me click. The email was 3 dense paragraphs. In it, Corinne told Graham she was genuinely worried about Waverly's emotional state. She said I seemed increasingly disconnected from Nola, and that she'd observed me being short-tempered and erratic over small things. She suggested that Graham consider whether Waverly might need professional help, or whether the situation at home needs to fundamentally change for Nola's well-being. I scrolled down. There were more emails, a thread going back months. In some, Corinne suggested I might have unresolved postpartum issues I was in denial about. In others, she wrote that I was isolating Graham from his support system, meaning her. And in one email, the one that made my blood go cold, she wrote, "If things continue this way, you may need to seriously consider what's best for Nola, even if that means making very difficult decisions. A child needs stability above all else, Graham." She was building a case, slowly, methodically, email by email. She was constructing a narrative that I was unstable, that I was a questionable mother, and that Graham might eventually need to remove Nola from my care. I looked at something I'd trusted and saw a lie with a foundation, a framework, and a roof. It had been built around me, while I sat inside it and called it shelter. That moment, sitting at that laptop with cookie flour still on my hands, was when I stopped being confused and started being furious. I printed every email, every single one. Then I closed the laptop, washed my hands, and sat at the kitchen table until my heartbeat came down below 90. I called Dylan that night from the bathroom with the water running so Graham wouldn't hear. "I found the emails, Dylan, between Corinne and Graham." "What emails?" I told him everything, every word. When I finished, the line was so quiet I thought we'd been disconnected. "What are you going to do?" he finally asked. "I'm not sure yet, but I'm done pretending." "Good, because you've been pretending for a long time, Wave, and it's been killing me to watch." The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my mother. Della answered on the second ring, surprised to hear from me on a random Wednesday. "Waverly? Is everything okay? Is Nola's fine, Mom. I need to talk to you. Really talk." And I told her about Corinne, about the emails, about feeling alone. My mother went quiet. Then she said, "I know I haven't been there, Waverly. I stepped back when I shouldn't have. But I'm here now. Tell me what you need." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't enough to erase 15 years. But it was a door cracking open that I thought had been painted shut. And I walked through it. I spent 2 weeks preparing. I consulted a family attorney, not to file for anything, just to understand where I stood legally. I made copies of the printed emails and stored them in 3 separate locations. I wrote out a timeline of every incident I'd logged in my notebook. During those 2 weeks, I barely slept. I'd lie next to Graham thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. What if he didn't believe me? What if he'd already read the emails and agreed with his mother? One of those sleepless nights, around 2 a.m., I went downstairs and made tea in the dark. Nola's drawings were taped to the fridge, wobbly circles she called family. Me, Graham, Nola, and a fourth figure she always drew slightly apart from the others. I'd asked her once who that was. "Gamma," she'd said. Even my 3-year-old had mapped the dynamic. Corinne was part of us, but separate, watching. It struck me then that what I was about to do wasn't just about protecting myself. It was about protecting what my daughter understood as home. And then, on a Saturday morning when Graham took Nola to get new shoes, I invited Corinne over for tea. She arrived looking perfect, as always. Cream cardigan, gold earrings, a plate of scones she'd baked that morning. "Waverly, the house looks lovely. Is that a new throw on the couch?" "Corinne, sit down. I have to show you something." I placed the stack of printed emails on the table between us. The air changed. She looked down at them, picked up the top page, read the first few lines, set it down. "Where did you get these?" "Graham's laptop. They were sitting in his inbox." "You read your husband's private correspondence?" "I read what you wrote about me to my husband. Let's stay focused on that." "Everything I wrote came from a place of concern. You told Graham I was unfit. You suggested he should consider difficult decisions about our daughter. You've been building a case against me for months, Corinne." She folded her hands on the table, and then the mask slipped. Not into anger, something worse, into calm, clear-eyed calculation. "Graham will always listen to me, Waverly. I'm his mother. I have known that boy for 33 years. You've had 5. And in those 5 years, I've built a life with him, a family, a home. I'm not competing with you, Corinne, but I'm not going to sit here while you dismantle everything from the inside." She stood up, collected her purse, and walked to the door. She didn't take the scones. When Graham came home with Nola on his hip and a bag of tiny sneakers in his hand, I sat him down at that same table and showed him everything, page by page. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I just let the words speak. He read for a long time. Then he put the pages down and pressed his palms against his eyes. "Some of this. I thought she was just being protective, being a concerned grandmother. She was positioning herself, Graham. Every email was designed to make you doubt me, to make you see me as a problem she was helping you manage. I should have seen it. You trusted your mother. I don't blame you for that. But now you see it, and what you do next is what matters." Graham called Corinne that evening. I sat in Nola's room, reading her a bedtime story about a caterpillar, while I listened to the murmur of his voice downstairs. When he came back up, he stood in the doorway looking like someone had rearranged his internal furniture. I told her she needs to step back, way back. No visits for a while, no emails about us, no dropping by. And she cried. She said I was choosing you over her. What did you say? I said I was choosing my family. We stood in the hallway, and he held me, and Nola babbled in her crib about the caterpillar, and I let myself be held. But I'd be lying if I said everything felt healed, because the damage Corinne had done wasn't just external. It was in my trust for Graham. Every time he'd said, "She means well," every dismissed concern, every sigh. Those were small betrayals, and they'd left marks that no single conversation could erase. I've learned there are things you can forgive and things you can only choose to live alongside. I accepted that Graham had been blind. Whether I could fully forgive the blindness, that was a longer road. Months have passed. Corinne sends letters that Graham shows me before reading. She showed up once, unannounced, and Graham met her at the front door and said, quietly, firmly, "Not yet, Mom. We're not ready yet." My mother, Della, started calling every Sunday, short calls that stretched into long ones. She flew in for Nola's 3rd birthday and sat on the living room floor building block towers with her granddaughter for the whole afternoon. It wasn't the bond I dreamed of as a teenager, but it was real. And real, even when it's imperfect, is worth more than something polished that's hollow inside. Dylan texted me last week. "How are you doing? For real?" I typed back, "I'm tired, but I'm standing." Sometimes those are the same thing, Wave. Graham and I are in counseling. Some weeks it feels like progress. Other weeks I look at him across the dinner table and a flash of old anger surfaces. Not about Corinne, but about all the times he could have listened and didn't. We're building something. I just don't know yet what shape it'll take. And Corinne? Graham says she's seeing a therapist. Whether that's genuine transformation or another performance, I honestly don't know. I'm not ready to find out. And that boundary, the right to decide on my own timeline, is something I will never hand over again. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to stand up to someone that everyone around you believed was wonderful? Someone whose mask was so good that you doubted your own eyes? Tell me about it in the comments, because I know there are people watching this right now who are living inside exactly this kind of story. Hit that like button and subscribe if this reached you. You're not imagining it. Trust what you see.